Hello and welcome to the G-Log for the 9th of July 2016. I am Geran Reaver. I know there hasn't been a G-Log for a long time, I'm talking months, but if there was anything that could draw me back into doing them, it's this. Today I'm going to be talking about the downfall of Warhammer. Quick little bit of background. I mentioned this in the Total War Warhammer First Impressions video, but I'll just go into it in a tad more detail. I have a very long history with Warhammer and Games Workshop. I've been collecting the Lord of the Rings models pretty much since they started, or at least I was for years. I stopped collecting them a while back. I've been collecting Warhammer Fantasy since I was about 11, and 40k since I was about 9. I'm 23 now, so you can tell I have a very long history with Warhammer. However, I stopped collecting it properly about 2, maybe 3 years ago. That was mostly due to the extortionate prices on all of the models and the fact that I didn't really battle. So the models were too expensive and I didn't have any reason to use them, and it just sapped a lot of my interest. But every so often I try and get back into it. But about a year ago, and I know this was a year ago because Facebook did that on this day a year ago, I bitched about Warhammer. So I know it was about a year ago I found out about Age of Sigmar. 1 year on, and I still can't believe that they genuinely went through with it. Age of Sigmar killed Warhammer. And that sounds really dramatic, but it is bloody true. Age of Sigmar was an update to the rules. It was essentially a new edition of Warhammer, but it changed the rules so completely, changing pretty much everything about Warhammer into, and I'm sorry to use the term, a casuals game. Because Warhammer was always really complex. That's why I never really got into playing it. I played a lot of Lord of the Rings and 40k, but Fantasy was so convoluted to get into that I only just learned how to play it right before they changed it to Age of Sigmar. So I'm just going to go through a couple of changes. I haven't looked into it that much because, to be honest, it saddens me when I do. But here are a few things that I know is part of Age of Sigmar. There are no points. Because normally how it works in Warhammer is you and your opponent choose a points value of the armies you're going to use, so that way you know it's going to be fair. And each unit has a points cost, and you spend the points, usually 2,000, and you create all of your army made of units totaling the agreed points cost. Age of Sigmar doesn't have this. You choose a number of units, and then you make your army out of that. So, and this is pretty much from the website. I don't think it is actually from the Warhammer website. I don't remember where exactly I read this, but it was at least a semi-official thing saying there is no reason to take weak units. Well, that's sort of shooting themselves in the foot. How are they going to sell the models for weak units if nobody's going to ever bloody use them? Another big change, and this really supports the for casuals rules that they're going for, is that there isn't the stat line that has always been there in every Warhammer, every Games Workshop system. They don't have a stat line. They have 4 stats. It's like movement, wounds, maybe attacks, and a save, I think. I don't know. Again, it saddens me when I look into it too much, so I didn't read much. But yeah, the stat line has been reduced to 4 things. From what I've seen, it's the kind of game that, like, a parent plays with their 5-year-old to entertain them. And I know this because I used to play this sort of thing with my dad. He collected lead miniatures back before they were sort of really what they are today. I don't even know if they were Games Workshop ones, but they were Lord of the Rings miniatures. And I used to play it with my dad. And we'd basically make up the rules as we go along, and that's what this feels like. It's not Warhammer. It's not even Lord of the Rings, which is the simple one, because it used to be Lord of the Rings was for beginners, 40k was for intermediates, Fantasy was for the people who really wanted to play a in-depth strategy game. But presumably because they're bumping up their prices so much, they can't get people to commit to this really complex system, so they dumbed it down. But they've dumbed it down so much that they've basically alienated their fan base. Anyway, back on the point of things that Age of Sigmar has killed, there are no army lists anymore. It used to be that every model in the Warhammer range was split into an army. Skaven, Empire, Tomb Kings, Vampire Counts, Dwarfs, Orcs and Goblins. All of it gone. Now there are like Forces of Order, Forces of Chaos. Oh, I don't even remember the other two. But there are like 3 or 4 forces, which are basically just the elements of the armies that have just been lumped together. So Skaven is apparently part of Chaos. I mean, yeah, they are Chaos influenced, so they're the most likely of any other army to actually ally with Chaos. But Skaven don't exist anymore. You get Skaven units in Forces of Chaos armies, I assume is how it works. So not only does this kill any chance of people committing to an army, the lore and interest of one army, but it makes all previous army books completely pointless. I mean, whenever a new one would come out, it would sort of swap over and you'd have to get the new army book so that you were using the updated rule set. But this is completely different. The army books now are just nothing. My first thought was, well, why don't I just continue playing with the old rule set? But you can't even get the old army books anymore. I have the final Skaven one they did, but I don't have the final High Elves one. Whereas I collect Skaven and High Elves, I just never got around to buying the High Elf army book. And now I can't. I'd have to go to eBay or something and buy it for a ridiculous upped price. To be honest, not that I'll be able to tell it apart from the Games Workshop ridiculous price. But anyway. The thing that really just depressed me to read is that in splitting the Warhammer range into these 4 categories, they discontinued 2 armies. Bretonnia, which, hasn't had an update in like 10 years, and Tomb Kings, which I thought was one of the more popular ones. But you cannot get any Bretonnia or Tomb Kings models anymore. Pretty much the rest of the range is intact. You just can't get either of those 2 armies. So anyone who collected either of them, I mean, they made a statement back when they were making this change, saying that every model you currently have can be used in the new system. But Bretonnia and Tomb Kings, there are no rules for. They're gone. I mean, I did find some Age of Sigmar rules for Tomb Kings. Like, I remember reading the things for Cetra the Imperishable, I think his name was. It's been a long time. They're not in the official rulebooks anymore. They're gone. You can't even buy the models. They're not on the website. And speaking of the website is a mess. It is a maze. Because they've split them into these 4 large categories, they've then split them further. And you'd think that they'd be like, in the Forces of Order category, you'd be able to then choose, oh, well, I'm interested in elves or dwarfs. Instead, you get, and I'm actually going to read some of the categories here, Stormcast Eternals, Seraphon, Fire Slayers, Free Peoples, Dispossessed, Lion Rangers, Darkling Covens. What the fuck are these? And there's stuff like the Dispossessed one is mostly dwarfs, or it is 10 dwarf things you can buy. Seraphon is pretty much the Lizardmen. Why can it not say Lizardmen? Why does it feel the need to split them into these categories? I mean, the Lion Rangers, there are 2 things in this category. The things in this category are the White Lions and the White Lion Chariot. Why Lion Rangers? Why not White Lions? Or just lump them with the bloody High Elves like they're supposed to be? The website is so poorly done. I mean, it's been going downhill for a while. I noticed they changed the design to be something a lot less interesting. But it took Charlie like an hour to find any fucking dwarfs on this website because he was looking to see what dwarfs they still did. The website is a complete mess, and I'm rambling quite a lot, but there is just so much irritation in me about this issue. Because the reason I started looking into this was I was playing a lot of Total Warhammer, and that game is great. I've got like 100 hours in it, because it is just fun. It is Warhammer, and I love the Warhammer world and the lore with which it's written. Oh, sorry, that's another thing that they changed. They now switched a lot of models to round bases. Instead of, because Fantasy's always been square bases, or rectangular ones, and now they're bloody circle. So if you buy a set where they've changed the base, you now get the circular bases. So not only are they removing all the rules for the previous things, they're completely changing the fucking basing system. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Yes, Total Warhammer. It's like the old style of Warhammer. It has the different armies, and it has all the units that I recognise, and because of my knowledge of the the Warhammer army strategies, I'm better at Total Warhammer because of it. And presumably this is because they started developing the game before they released Age of Sigmar, and therefore it uses the old style. But Bretonnia's in that. So I was thinking when the game, because when I started playing the game, it was before I'd sort of read into Age of Sigmar, and it was like, they must have chosen the armies to appear in this based on the ones they wanted to increase the sales of. You know, they wanted to sell more vampire counts, more Bretonnia, because Bretonnia doesn't get much promotion, does it? Turns out it's dead. You cannot buy them. So why the flaming hell are they in the game? I mean, you can't play as them in the game, but they're a fully fledged faction that in most campaigns you have to fight to win. So they're getting some kind of star billing in the game, and yet you cannot buy a single one of their models on the bloody website. And Tomb Kings are rumoured as one of the favourites for another army they're going to add. It will be very easy to. They just need to expand the map a tad. If they do that, then there'll be the 2 discontinued armies in this game that they've just released a year after Age of Sigmar. The whole thing is completely insane, and based on what I've read, 40k is next. They're going to kill it. And it's really depressing, because as much as I'd sort of ignore and shun away Warhammer because of the stupid decisions Games Workshop was making, I always thought, it's okay, I can go back in a year or two when I've got over it, because it'll always be there. It's been around for like 40 years or something. Games Workshop isn't going to die in my lifetime, and it turns out they bloody are. They've killed their flagship. It is sinking, and 40k is going to be next. And when I was Googling, I was trying to find if you can actually find the old rules since before Age of Sigmar, and I found that there are online communities that have made a fan edition of Warhammer, and they basically improved on the previous edition of Fantasy to create this fan edition, and they've made rule books for a lot of the armies to go with this new fan edition. Do any of you know anything about this? Are you, any of you viewers, part of any of these movements? Because I did plan to ask in this whether that sort of thing existed, because it would depress me if they didn't. I'm glad they do. If you are part of it, I salute you, because holy crap, if Games Workshop can't get their shit together and do it properly, then at least somebody is. But the models are still great, is the really thing that depresses me. If Games Workshop had really just killed everything, the models would be bad. But the models are great, and they've just killed any motivation to buy them or use them. And I've been rambling about this for a long time, and I do apologise that this G-log is going to be a lot longer than I expected. But yeah, there is just so much irritation in this. This is like 10 years of... I'm essentially a Warhammer fanboy. So this is 10 years of betrayed fanboyism just raining down on them because of how intensively I've been researching this while playing Total War Warhammer. And if you want my opinion of what they should have done... And at first, when I first read about Age of Sigmar, this is what I thought they were doing. I thought it should... I think it should be a standalone rule set. You know, like they do those boxed games where you basically buy the game like Space Hulk and Battle of Five Armies. You buy the box set and it's basically a game in a box where it gives you all of the models and all of the stuff you need. They could have done an alternate version of that where they release Age of Sigmar as a casual, and I do apologise for continually using that term. It's not the correct term. An easier beginners, that's the term I should be using. A beginner's rule set. So it uses very, very simple versions of the Warhammer rules to get younger people, because at the moment you have to be like 14 to play or to buy them or something. So they could have aimed it at younger people, or 14-year-olds maybe, and had it as a sort of play this to get into it, and then once you're hooked, move on to the sort of full adult rule set. And if they'd done that, then I probably wouldn't have had anywhere near... Well, I wouldn't have anywhere near as much of an issue with it. I mean, their website would still be fucked, I imagine, but then they could have had the fans that they've had for like 30 years using the rule set that they want to use, and they could have still hooked in new people with this beginner rule set. Because that's presumably what Lord of the Rings was supposed to be, but there is just too big a gap between Lord of the Rings and Warhammer. Because I went Lord of the Rings 40k fantasy as the natural progression, and I imagine a lot of other people did too, but I guess that wasn't progressing enough for Games Workshop, so they decided to, cut their own knees off so that they're more on level with the people who might buy this. But it's a luxury thing. It's like I'm looking at a single model here for £47. I mean, yeah, it's a big model. Like, or another one for £55. They're big models, but they're so freaking expensive now. It's just not encouraging people to start collecting it, and just turning the rules into baby's first Warhammer isn't the way to fix that. Lower your goddamn prices, or maybe even just create a second range of less detailed models that you can sell at a lower price. Or they can sell these at a lower price, they just fucking refuse to. Yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say on this. Please tell me I'm not alone in my outrage and sadness about how Games Workshop has killed Warhammer. And if you think I'm wrong, if you think that Age of Sigmar is, the best thing that's ever happened to Warhammer, you're mistaken. I'm not going to say you're wrong, just that you're mistaken. Yeah, alright, it's not fair for me to say that, but if you do absolutely love Age of Sigmar, please don't comment and tell me so, because, no, it is just the worst thing that's ever happened to what used to be my favourite hobby. Anyway, I'll wrap it up there. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this, except, with the previous proviso. So, thank you for watching. Please consider pledging to my Patreon, linked in the description, for early access to a lot of videos, including Pokestins, and I will catch you later.